Well, what would a get tough policy with China actually look like, and what might be the risks? Let's bring in three members of Parliament to debate that. Rob Oliphant is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Michael Chong is the Foreign Affairs Critic for the official opposition Conservatives. And Jack Harris is the Foreign Affairs Critic for the NDP. Good to see you all, gentlemen. Mr. Chong, let me start with you, since it's your motion. Why are you setting a deadline for the government of 30 days to give us a decision to ban Huawei?
Well, it's long past time for the government to make a decision on two issues. First, on Huawei, and secondly, on a plan to counter Chinese foreign influence operations here in Canada. The government said years ago that it was deliberating on whether to allow Huawei in Canada's 5G network. Last year, in May, the government indicated it would make a decision by October of 2019. Then in July, it said it would make a decision after October 2019. We're now more than a year after October 2019, and still no decision. So it's long past time for them to make a decision on Huawei. And on the issue of influence operations, the government has said for a year now that they are coming forward with a new framework, a new policy on China. No new policy on China can be without a policy on how to counter these foreign influence operations.
All right, let me come back to that piece, but let me stay with Huawei. Mr. Oliphant, the government's been sitting on this decision for more than a year. Our Five Eyes allies have already moved against Huawei. What's the delay here?
I wouldn't say there's a delay. What I said is there's a careful consideration of all the factors. That we want a robust policy that protects Canadians, that ensures that Canadian security and all our security interests are taken into account. We want to do that in conjunction, yes, with our allies, but we will have our own foreign policy.
Can you comply with the timeline of the motion that says, Canadians should have an answer in 30 days here?
I don't think that Canadian security should have a deadline. And I think the Conservatives are playing politics on this. That what we want to do is make sure that we have a robust, good set of policies, regardless of what potential company might want to do business in Canada. And we want to make sure we do that well.
Some people have suggested
30 days is arbitrary. Why not 21 days? Why not 41 days? They can't explain why they came up with 30 days. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, some people have suggested the decision's already made, but the government doesn't want to announce it for fear of angering China. Is that the case?
No, never. This idea that we are afraid of angering China is ridiculous. Our number one priority is the safety and security of Canadians, including Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, who are arbitrarily detained in China.
Right.
We want to make sure that we continue in every way to stand up for Canada and Canadian interests, and we've been doing that.
All right, Jack Harris, does the NDP, Mr. Harris, does the NDP share the urgency for getting a decision here on Huawei?
Look, we're interested in seeing something happen. The 30 days is arbitrary, there's no question. But the amendment was as soon as possible. And then during question period, the government representative said, well, the decision will be made in due course. Well, that's where we are now. That's where we were a year ago. Something has to happen. A lot of things have changed in the last year. And I think Canadians need to know where we're going on this. I believe the government does know what it's going to do, and it's just not saying so.
All right, Mr. Chong, you talked about, you also want to hear from the government on a plan to end Chinese government operations of intimidating Canadians on Canadian soil. What specifically do you want the government to do?
Well, we'd like them to take a look at what Australia has done. Australia introduced legislation that strengthened enforcement, strengthened sanctions for those conducting these subversive influence operations on their soil. Australia also set up a coordinating office that's responsible for the government's overall strategy to counter these subversive activities and to also pursue specific cases where wrongdoing is being perpetrated by Chinese agents. So those are the kinds of things we'd like to see. In addition, we'd like to see a foreign agent registry set up in Canada so that former politicians, former bureaucrats, who work on behalf of a foreign state or a state-controlled entity are required to register their contracts in the interests of transparency.
All right,
But I just want to address one thing here.
It's got to be real quick here.
The date of 30 days is not arbitrary. The government has announced for a year now that it will be coming forward with a plan by the end of this fall with a new framework on China, a new policy on China. The fall ends on December 21st. This motion was written to be consistent with that timetable, and no new framework on China can be without a decision on Huawei in Canada's 5G network.
All right, Mr. Oliphant, what's the government doing to stop agents of the Chinese government from influencing or intimidating Canadians here on Canadian soil?
Canada has a robust set of institutions which do this, from the RCMP through CSIS to other agents who are ensuring that we do this. We are obviously having to be responsive to this. Complaints are investigated, and people are always under the care and the concern of the government of Canada. That is the reality of the way things work, and there's no mistaking in the fact that Canada keeps a robust regime around security, and we're not going to simply cast aspersions on individuals. We are a country of the rule of law, and we follow due process and do that carefully and consistently, and we'll continue to do that.
Mr. Harris, what more should the government be doing to check Chinese influence in Canada?
Well, I mean, what's lacking is a cohesive, coordinated approach. There's no single point of contact. People are getting the runaround. There was a 50-page report by Amnesty International completed in March outlining a whole suite of things that should be done and could be done to protect Canadians from harassment and interference. And government really hasn't put together that comprehensive plan that gives people any confidence.
All right, let's finish on this. We still have two Michaels, Mr. Chong, Michael Chong, being held in China, and there could be serious economic risks as well to taking a tougher line on China right now. How concerned are you about those risks? What role should those concerns play in how Canada moves next?
Well, we're very concerned about the fate of the two Michaels, as well as the fate of Robert Schellenberg, who's on death row, and the fate of Hussein Jalil, who remains imprisoned in China. But we do know one thing, that the government's policy on China isn't working. And it's not working because the government has refused to stand up to the bullying and intimidation that the Chinese have sent our way. We believe that the only way to send a clear message to China that these kind of tactics won't work is by taking a stronger stand, and that's exactly why we presented this motion.
All right,
today.
Mr. Oliphant, what about the risks of moving against China, especially now?
I think I don't see any new risks. The reality is we have been strong, forthright, and determined with respect to Michael Spavor and Michael Colbury. Nothing has changed in that. We will continue to speak up for human rights. We'll continue to speak out for the international rules-based order and international rule of law. We are consistent in our both our concern and criticisms about China. That has not changed. What we don't want to do is get into political decisions around technology and security. Let's take the politics out of security decisions. Let's make sure we're doing good, intelligent, evidence-based decisions to make sure that Canadians are protected.
Mr. Harris, how concerned should we be about retaliation from China?
Well, I think if we're looking at protecting our own citizens in our own country, I don't think that's a matter that you would expect any retaliation whatsoever. But it's been suggested that the reason that there has been so much activity within Canada is because there hasn't been much consequence and is basically seen as a soft target for influence. Well, if we are going to respond to that, then we should respond to that and send the message that we don't want this happening in our country. I don't think that that's the case for retaliation at all.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for your time on this tonight. We'll see how the vote goes. Appreciate it. Thanks for speaking with me.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.